So this October, I'm doing a talk at the World, what is it? Video Marketing World Conference. Good Lord, need to get that right. That's actually being put on by my former boss, Jeremy Vest. And no, he asked me to come speak, which is a great honor. I have not been doing a lot of public speaking, but that's something as the channel goes forward that I want to be able to do more of. And now that the channel's having some measure of success, people want to hear what I have to say about it. Anyway, all that is to say that I've been trying to think of what I wanted to talk about. I did a talk a while back at another conference called the Invincible Startup Conference, where I titled it How to Be a Cult Leader on YouTube. And at the time I had a really much smaller than now. It was probably 15, 20,000, something like that, and subscribers. And I talked then about how not so much about building the audience, but engaging with the audience, building really strong, loyal followers, because I had a small following, but they were really loyal and engaged and stuff. Anyway, point being, I thought maybe I could kind of repeat that one, talk about that a little bit again, but I stumbled on a story through a podcast called the You Are Not So Smart podcast that I want to say Matt Herring, one of my oldest and most generous Patreon supporters, he turned me onto this podcast, and it's Gerald McCraney is the guy who runs it. I think that's his name. And he talks about a lot of psychological stuff. He talks a lot about things you think you know but you don't. All the ways that our reasoning fails us because we're actually emotional creatures and all that kind of stuff. Well, he talked quite a bit in this last episode that I listened to about a study that I found fascinating. And I find parallels between this study and what I'm doing here on YouTube, in my experience on YouTube. And what the study basically was they were trying to determine whether or not a song would be popular given different circumstances. And so basically what they did was they took a whole bunch of people. There were like 14,000 people in the study or something like that. It was a huge group. And they separated them into 8 different groups. And they had the same number of songs. They had 14 songs or something like that. All from unknown artists, all songs that they hadn't heard before. And they put them in these different groups. And what they did was in some groups they had... Basically, there were 2 different scenarios. There were people who heard all the music with no social proof whatsoever. There weren't any reviews for the songs. There weren't any ratings for the songs. It was just 14 songs that came out of nowhere. And in other cases, it was more like what happens when you go to iTunes, like which ones were rated the best, which ones had the best reviews and that kind of thing. And it was kind of talking about how sometimes you're the first person to hear a song, but sometimes you might be the last person to hear a song. Like there's that, I guess, Justin Bieber song, Despacito. I keep hearing people talk about it. I don't know if I've ever heard it. I'm just pretty cut off from modern music, I guess. But they basically wanted to find out if you had the same songs and set up different scenarios where maybe a song was rated as popular in one group and rated unpopular in another group, if that would make a difference. Or if it was a completely blank slate, if the same songs would rise to the top every time. Basically, they wanted to find out if they created these sort of 8 different parallel universes where people's experience of discovering a song was different in each universe. Would the same songs all rise to the top, right? So that was the idea. And what they found out was that above a certain level, there were some songs that were terrible, rated terrible in every single group. And there were some songs that all made in the top 50% of every single group. But above that 50% line, it was chaos. It was different in every single group. And what they basically determined was that a song just had to be better than bad, basically. A song had to be good enough to not be in that low 50%. And beyond that, it was all luck. It was all just up to chance. It was all just up to who heard it first and who might have rated it a certain way and who might have seen something a little bit differently. That was the conclusion of this study. And I actually did find the study. I just heard him talk about it in the podcast. I found the study, and I'm kind of going through it. It's very dense. But I find this a fascinating topic, again, with parallels to YouTube, because I had a big, huge, explosive, best video ever from that random Thursday, how long does a separate head stay conscious video. And you could relate that to the topic. Maybe it's a titillating, sensationalistic topic or whatever. But for whatever reason, the Google algorithm just opened up to that one. I don't know. And my conclusion, especially after hearing that study and looking into it, is that I think it kind of goes the same way with YouTube. Now, there's a lot of other factors involved with YouTube, with the algorithm and all that kind of stuff. But another thing that's a fairly regular truism on YouTube is that if a video gets 20%, 15 to 20% of the subscribers watching it in the first 24 hours, in other words, if a lot of the subscribers watch the video on the first day, it will continue to do well throughout the life of the video. So, like, I did a video today about Blue Origin that just came out, and it's doing pretty well. It's got like 39,000 views last time I looked. And I'm expecting it will continue to do pretty well because it did so well on its first day. That's just kind of part of the whole algorithm thing. But I think, and maybe the reason this is sort of embedded into this algorithm is because it's that initial explosion, it's that initial positive review of the video that carries it along. That is an indicator to the algorithm that this is a video worth promoting. And I think it kind of goes, so I mean, that's a more manufactured situation because there is an algorithm and a company behind it and all that kind of stuff. But I think it does still kind of play on the same fundamental ideas of what this study was saying. Because I have done videos that I put my heart and soul into and worked late into the night and busted my hump, and it didn't get that many more views, right? And it's really frustrating, especially when you're first starting off and you barely have any subscribers and you barely have any views, you work your butt off, and it's just the needle doesn't move. But my message would be, you don't have to bust your hump on every video. You don't have to make every video the best video that ever existed out there. It just has to rise above that 50% line. It just has to be better than the wheat or the wheat from the chaff. It has to be better than the chaff. And eventually, those lucky conditions that would make a song rise to the top, just through like chaos theory, basically, the butterfly effect and all that. If you do that enough times with a video and have it be just, better than most, there's like a minimum viable quality that you have to attain with each video and keep at that level. Eventually, you'll get a severed head video that just explodes and takes off. And that's what causes your growth. Growth on YouTube is not necessarily a linear or even an exponential line. It's a series of jumps, and each time you jump, you come back down a little bit above where you were before. So I think it is relevant to YouTube. There's definitely a foot that goes on the scale when you talk about the algorithm and the way things get categorized and stuff. But I think the principle still applies, especially for a younger YouTuber, a new YouTuber that just is trying to build an audience. You have to start somewhere, and you might as well start with something that's sustainable that you can keep putting out there. Just making sure that your videos are above a certain level of quality, and everything kind of will flow from there. Obviously, I'm still working on this. I'm using this as a sounding board, just kind of curious how it comes off to everybody. But I found it an interesting article. And the podcast is really interesting. It was actually talking about progress and whether we can actually make progress, whether progress is something that can actually happen, or whether it's something that kind of just explodes through random chance in the way this other one did. Anyway, it's called the You Are Not So Smart podcast. It's worth checking out. But anyway, just throwing that out there. That's my Monday, and appreciate you guys watching. It's been too much information. Catch you later.